This is my corn snake Einstein's home for the past 9 years. There have been little changes over the year, like different hide boxes, different decor, but in general, it's been aspen snake bedding with a couple rocks, a couple bits here or there, and this enclosure. But in this video, we're gonna take this drab old enclosure to a zoo level enclosure. I have it drawn up here on a rough estimate of what I want to build. But with that being said, I want to use one of the things that has been in his enclosure the entire time. And a fun fact about this one is my snake got stuck inside this little hole for 2 weeks without me knowing where he went. We thought he escaped, turns out he was in here the whole time. So I want to take this, paint it, make it look new, add it into this hardscape, and make it forever stand out as a centerpiece to this enclosure. Without further ado, with the clap in my hands, it's clean. Well, we have cleaned it out, and today we're gonna focus on this guy right here.
Now, obviously, the original goal was to use this tree in the actual enclosure, but after doing some tests, unfortunately, it does not going to look anywhere near what the color of this concrete would be, and color matching would be almost impossible with the colors I have available. So you will see I scrap this idea of painting it, but I actually end up scrapping everything about this tree and end up using a different type of hide. This is for my corn snake Einstein's enclosure, so the goal of this background is supposed to mimic as close as possible of where they come from. They come from parts of Florida, North and South Carolina, so I did some Googling and found images of areas in those parts, and some parts have very rocky and textured places, so that's what we are going to mimic in this side of the enclosure. My goal is to have a rocky outcropping that has a hidden cave entrance that can act as a cool hide. So as I did in my rough sketch, I want to fully map it out on this piece of foam with a marker, and then as I add and subtract foam, I can refine the details from there. I also want to say that this foam cutter that I'm using in this video is incredible. It's one of the new tools I got, and might be my favorite way to cut foam. It's a little fumey and you have to have good ventilation, but it's so nice and easy to cut things without accidentally breaking it with the hobby knife. You're also going to see a lot of hot glue use in this building of the foam and a lot of masking tape. This is just to help keep it together, so when I add the concrete as the hardener and keeping the structure fully together, this will just help it from falling apart before I do that. In this build, you'll see me do a little bit of markering here or there, but most of it is just what I feel good in the moment that looks good in my eyes. So you're not going to see very much of the, marker, measure, and cut and all that kind of stuff. It's more just based on what I feel, and usually it means recutting things a few times until I think it looks good. And that's just how my creative process goes. As I finish the foam design work, I want to give you a huge shout out to my Patreon members that allow me to do everything I do here at All Around Reptiles, including build these awesome projects, because these are not cheap projects to do. So if you want to go support me, go down the link in the description and join my Patreon.
It is the next day. We have all of our pieces glued down into the actual piece, or stuff like this where this is going to be a removable door. I will be able to remove it. So with that being said, let's mix up some concrete and get modeling.
If you haven't seen this, this is the Buddy Rhodes vertical concrete mix. This is by far one of my favorite mediums to use at the current standpoint, and it looks like real rock because it basically is just crushed up rock. If you do use this concrete, please use some sort of respirator or do it outside in an open area because it is super, super dusty and not good for your lungs. After it is all mixed, it is time to do the scratch coat. The scratch coat is a type of coating. Basically, I take a thin layer of this concrete mixture, I slather it over every single piece of foam or every single piece that I want covered. So when I come in and actually texture it after this scratch coat has dried, there will be no areas where the foam can show through, and it can also help with the actual rigidity of it to help it give a little bit more strength, meaning there's just more concrete there. Now that we have the scratch coat done, I wanted to do a little bit of sculpting on the areas that aren't going to be shown necessarily, just to get myself back and used to the medium again. So this is the area that won't probably be shown in the final product because there will be bedding covering it. So I'm just figuring out what I wanted to do with the texture of the rock, and now we can fully go on to everything else.
Alright, well, the enclosure has dried, and here's what we're working with. First of all, this piece right here is going to become a tiny little tree. As you saw, depending on if I recorded it, this is a tree root that goes right here, and it's going to go up and around and to it. I'm also going to add tree roots coming down and on this. Now, the last time you saw it, it was pretty nicely covered. Well, I forgot that I still needed to fit it onto this top, and all of these edges that spilled over were unfortunately inhibiting it from going in the spot that I wanted it. So I hammered them off in a bunch of little pieces, so we will be able to glue them back on / just add different concrete onto it and make it fit properly.
This came out significantly better than I thought it was going to. The original goal was to try to make it as seamless as possible, but not allowing any of the concrete to actually connect to the actual base concrete layer. So I added a little bit of cling film to stop it from connecting, and it worked very well to also hide the seam after everything dried. I was also a little hesitant to do this tree trunk / root ball because I didn't know how it was going to turn out with the very mediocre skills of my sculpting. But I can definitely say it turned out very well, and I was able to differentiate the rock to the root, and it worked out very well. And you can also see that I'm building out the rock texture, so it's not just a flat concrete background. Now that this side is complete, we have to turn our attention over to the other side while this dries, so the next time we come back to this side, we can start painting because there's a whole empty side we need to fill. Now we have the same idea of adding the foam and then adding a scratch coat onto this, so we had to make the foam, and one thing I wanted to do was somehow make an area where Einstein can burrow in and out of this hide because he loves to burrow without actually coming out of the main entrance. The weird rectangular thing you see me building off of right now is actually a built-in hide for a humid box. I always think humid boxes are super ugly because they are just pieces of plastic, so I'm building one into the hardscape so I don't have any ugly plastic pieces showing. As I told you in the beginning, this was supposed to be where that tree came into play. I was going to add roots going down it and adding to the actual aesthetic, but it just didn't work very well, so I decided to go in a different path and ended up going with this rock. Now, this was a rock that you can buy from any normal PetSmart or Petco, so I wanted to give my own little flair on it, so I decided to cover it with concrete and make it slot into the concrete that I laid down so it would fit well and not be sliding around if Einstein decides to push it over.
Alright, well, it is paint time. Finally, I have gotten the glazes in after like 3 weeks of waiting. Unfortunate, but here we are. We have our black, our maple, our white, and our olive, which is just green. And we are going to start coloring this.
Now this is where everything really starts to take shape and actually have that depth of color that this concrete needs to look good and look correct. Now this is just the first layer of paint, which I'm basically just doing a dry brush of dark brown, blacks, and a little bit of olive, just to add a little bit more depth and get into all the nooks and crannies that need that depth of character and that darkness. Now you'll see I use that maple on a lot of the tree root and mainly on the tree root, but if you look really closely at some of the rock work, I use that spray bottle to actually add little specks of color just to add a little bit more depth of color again with that olive and that maple to give it more of a sandstone rocky feel. Well, we've been in the workshop this entire time, so it is time to flip it over and take it upstairs. Now, what bedding am I going to use? Well, I'm going to use a mix of soil, coconut bark, a little bit of charcoal, and a good amount of sand for moisture retention. Because if I put aspen snake bedding in this enclosure when it is beautifully customized, it is going to look so off, and I will not put myself through all this effort just to look like that. Are you ready for this? That is how this comes off. It just slides straight off and it hides the seam incredibly well. I'm going to fill it up with some soil here and then we can finish this enclosure with a little bit of wood hardscape, some trees, and well, this is the final product.
Well, there it is. I am so happy with about how this enclosure came out. This poor guy has been sitting in a rack system for the past 2 weeks and he is raring to go. So without further ado, let's get the snake that I've had for almost a decade, Einstein here, into his enclosure. As we put Einstein into his enclosure, this officially ends this incredible build. I spent over 2 weeks working on this, so if you don't mind, please hit that subscribe button down below. With that being said, that is going to do for this video of All on Reptiles. If you want to see how crazy builds I do in the future, subscribe.